The American desert is defined by its vastness. It is an isolating, unforgiving geography where survival requires deep roots and heavy infrastructure. Yet hidden within these rock formations sits a settlement that was erased from the map overnight. When a population leaves a location instantly, the environment enters a state of arrested decay. It is a specific physical condition where the slow march of time is halted. The infrastructure remains intact. Front doors are left wide open, and everyday artifacts sit perfectly frozen exactly where they were dropped. We see this pattern in places like Bodie, California. Looking at the weathered timber and the barren streets, the structures themselves are undisturbed by violence or slow economic decline. The physical evidence shows the inhabitants dropped what they were doing and walked away. Moving to the perimeter, the physical record becomes contradictory. The access roads are blocked by modern steel signs warning of unexploded ordnance, alongside broad notices denying public access, suggesting an active physical threat layered over an abandoned site. Human settlements of this density do not simply evaporate without a massive external pressure. The artifacts left behind in the dust suggest three distinct possibilities, each describing a very different force behind the town's sudden disappearance. The first explanation points to a catastrophic industrial disaster. Historical record shows that invisible threats force immediate evacuations, much like the underground coal fires that emptied the borough of Centralia. A clearer analog is the incident in Graniteville, South Carolina. A freight train derailed in the center of town, releasing 90 tons of chlorine gas directly into the residential blocks. The resulting toxic plume triggered an immediate, mandatory evacuation order for thousands of people. This map illustrates a documented behavioral response known as an evacuation shadow. A chemical spill creates a localized danger zone. However, the sheer uncertainty of an invisible gas causes panic, pushing populations miles outside the actual threat radius to flee. Local topography and shifting wind conditions alter the path of the chemical plume by the minute. This topographical confusion leaves residents entirely unsure of their exposure risk, causing them to run regardless of official boundary lines. The psychological pressure of an invisible toxin overrides standard procedure. Evacuees leave without packing supplies, abandon family pets, and often refuse to return to their homes even weeks after the environmental protection agencies declare the sector clear. However, examining the ruins of this specific desert town reveals a problem with this theory. There is no chemical residue baked into the soil, and no heavy environmental remediation equipment left on the grid. An evacuation shadow accounts for the sudden, panicked departure of the population. But the total absence of toxic residue on the surface means the catalyst must be located somewhere else. Beyond the town limits, the geography is punctuated by heavy concrete access points that plunge directly into the rock. These restricted tunnels shift the focus from surface-level accidents toward deliberate, classified intervention. Between 1998 and 2015, a former Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development highlighted unauthorized spending across the Departments of Defense and HUD. She claimed that $21 trillion in taxpayer funds were entirely unaccounted for. As this diagram shows, those missing funds allegedly financed the construction of a massive subterranean network. The claim suggests 170 interconnected underground bases were built to house top officials and the ultra-wealthy during a near-extinction event. Facilities matching this description are an established matter of public record. The Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado relies on heavily reinforced tunnels bored directly into solid granite to ensure operations survive direct external strikes. The Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center in Virginia operates under similar logic, maintaining a massive footprint carefully concealed within remote, densely forested topography. Excavating a subterranean facility of that magnitude requires thousands of tons of earth to be moved in absolute secrecy. Forcing the evacuation of a remote town provides the necessary isolation for a black-budget construction site. But industrial science and classified defense budgets fail to account for the erratic sensory anomalies reported by travelers who enter the area after nightfall. Witnesses document glowing erratic orbs darting through the unpolluted sky. Their movements closely mirror the Marfa lights in Texas, a recurring atmospheric phenomenon that teams of aerospace engineers and physicists have failed to definitively explain. Alongside the lights are reports of tall, dark silhouettes lurking at the edge of vision. In global folklore, these are categorized as shadow people, enigmatic, hostile forms known to induce intense paranoia and absolute physical paralysis. Historical records categorize these specific dark forms as harbingers, entities that manifest to warn of an imminent, catastrophic collapse, like an earthquake or a sudden flood. Whether these phenomena are actual entities moving through the desert or a localized mass psychological hysteria, the terror they induce is identical. It is a psychological pressure potent enough to break a community's will to stay. Launching a drone in the freezing hours just before dawn provides a final, unimpeded aerial survey of the remaining infrastructure. Panning across the central grid, the monitor captures an anomaly. A lone, dark silhouette stands perfectly still among the abandoned structures. As the camera pushes in, the form loses its structural integrity, disintegrating into dust and scattering on the wind. We cannot definitively prove the exact catalyst for the town's collapse. The physical remnants cannot confirm whether the residents fled an invisible toxic cloud, were forcibly displaced by a subterranean defense project, or were driven out by a supernatural harbinger. The exact mechanism of their departure is secondary to the physical proof they left behind. The perfectly preserved artifacts and abandoned homes demonstrate clearly that human permanence in this environment is a fragile illusion. The desert operates on a timeline that eventually reclaims every structure placed upon it. Some places empty out overnight, and they are meant to stay lost.